Welcome to Wine with Bill, and I'm Bill. Today's guest is a very special person for a variety of reasons. One, she was on this show in September of 2021, but it was a podcast form. Today, not only is she live, but we've got the video, so that's great. And number two is, a lot has happened since that time, a lot of good things for the winery, and we're going to talk about them. Julie, welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you, Bill. It's lovely to be back.
Well, thank you. Let's start with some really good news, and it's mentioned here, and you had a great response to your entry into the 2023 San Francisco Chronicle wine competition, correct?
Yes. So we've never done this before.
I was going to ask you, this is your first rodeo.
It is. Because, we never felt like we needed to enter any of our wine in a competition, but we did it just for fun. We wanted to just, a lot of people like our wine, but we wanted to see, okay, do other people outside of our community like our wine? So we decided to enter our newest release, which is the 2018, just to see where it was at with, a lot of the experts up in San Francisco. And we were very pleased. It did well. And it was entered, they have different categories depending on the price of the wine. So it was entered with, where other similarly priced wines are. And it won silver. So we're very happy.
We should remind our viewers and listeners that you produce only one varietal of wine, correct?
That's right.
And it is?
Cabernet Sauvignon.
Okay. And you've been doing this for, what is this, 9th, 10th? What is it?
This is actually our 10th year.
10th year.
So this is our 10th anniversary. And that sort of is a segue to all the things that have happened since we had this wonderful vertical tasting with our winemaker, Dennis Hoy, and we decided to taste all the 9 years worth of wine that we've produced. And of course, this will be our 10th year when we harvest. And it just, we had a great time, and all our wine still are very wonderful. And we discovered that our the first release, which was 2014, already almost 10 years old, right? And we wanted to see what potential for further aging was for the wine. And Dennis, our winemaker, stated that, it can probably age for another 10 years.
Well, that's
and
great
it's going to be even more complex, in 10 years. And it should be a lot of fun. So
I'm just curious, why did you choose the 2018? And what was the process like as to entering it? And what hoops did you have to jump through?
So we chose the newest release because it was our youngest year, because 2018 has a lot to offer as far as aging more, right? And so we wanted to start with 2018 and see what it was like when we just released it, with a thought that we may re-enter it next year after another year of aging in the bottle and see if that makes any difference. So it was just for fun. We picked 2018.
Okay. And as a result of this experience, let alone the silver medal, what do you think you'll do next year?
I think we're going to do it again next year.
Good.
It was it was a fun experience. And maybe next year we'll enter both the 18 again, just to see if it's going to make any difference next year, and our 2019, which I think is going to be fantastic. We had a little peek of 2019, and already the other people who've gotten a chance to taste it thinks it's wonderful.
Well, good. Well,
Yeah.
it sounds like you've got one that's ready to challenge for the gold and perhaps even win it. So that's good. That's good. Well, speaking of your vertical tasting, on this side, I know you had vertical tastings in Korea. Mm-hmm. Is that correct?
I did.
What was the genesis of that trip, and how did it come about? And oh my gosh, what experiences you must have had.
It was wonderful. So everything has a story, right? And so the story with our vineyard is I was born in Korea, and I came to the U.S. Right after kindergarten. So I've been in the U.S. for, decades. And I've actually never had the chance to return since I left. And it was always something that I wanted to do. And but of course, your life gets busy, and you travel, but you travel with other people. Everybody has a different agenda, and I never really got a chance to return. And the vineyard was actually, I think of it, was put in with Korean money, because my father had passed away about 15 years ago, and I actually inherited a little bit of his estate, and I chose to use that money to put the vineyard in on our property. And so and my father has never lived in the States. He has always lived in Seoul, Korea. And so I felt like, Koreans should taste my wine, because it was actually
that was a connection that was kind of meant
Korean
to
money.
be. Yeah.
And this was our 10th year. I wanted to sort of reconnect, with the country that I was born in. And so I decided I'm going to go visit. And of course, I'm a physician and I'm super busy. So this is my first 10 days off in 3 years since the pandemic.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I was dying to go. And so I decided, well, I'm going to take some of my wine and have a couple of tastings with some of the people in Seoul. And so that's what I did.
Well, I have a little inside knowledge because I've seen some of your Instagram posts and whatever. So what were your expectations about, I'll call it the food and wine scene in Seoul? And then what did you encounter, and what was the reality, and did it exceed your expectations, or totally it was not what you expected at all?
So I knew that at this point, Koreans really enjoy wine as well. So in the past, they drink a lot of what's called soju, which is almost like, it's based from rice, and it's like Korean vodka made out of rice. And makgeolli, which is the other Korean drink. And they've, traditionally drank distilled. So these are like distilled alcohol beverages. And then I realized the last 10 years or so that Koreans were drinking more wine. And I saw it on social media, and I know that they export a lot of wine from like Italy and France. Import. Can I do that again?
Yeah.
They're import, right? Not export.
Okay. And when you talk about imports, obviously, because that's what they have to do, was there a tendency toward which varietal they wanted? Was it all over the board, whites, pinks, reds, or was it, once again, a tendency toward the bigger reds?
So they drink, I think, all varietals of wine, because they get a lot of wine from France and Italy. But I also notice, when I see some of their movies and some of their social media posts, that they're starting to really drink a lot of reds. And of course, we only produce Cabernet Sauvignon, so I thought, well, this would be perfect.
What a match.
I know. So I'll take some Cabernet. And the food scene, well, I love Korean food. And I was expecting to eat just tons of Korean food there, and which I did. But I did 2 tastings over there, and there were 2 different groups. The first group was with a lot of chefs, food bloggers, professors, journalists, and wine experts. And we did the first tasting at a restaurant called Arus, where he serves mostly tapas. So it's like, small appetizers, maybe a little more with an Italian flair, and not really Korean.
Interesting.
And so we did a tasting there. It was fantastic. And I met all these people who like love wine. And luckily, they all loved our wine. And I actually took 4 years worth. I took 2016, 17, 18. And I actually also took a 19, even though it's not released.
Oh, yeah.
Because I wanted to see
A
what
little
they
preview.
thought. A
Yeah,
preview.
yeah.
And they loved it. So I was very pleased. And it was so much fun. And, you know, we felt so comfortable right away. Luckily, they all spoke English, so because my Korean is just awful. And we were there for hours, just hours. And an interesting thing that happened at the end, you know, we must have, plus my 4 bottles, plus, you know, the chef opened another bottle of something else, and then, you know, a bubbly, and, you know, so we've had lots of different bottles, and, you know, there were quite a few of us. I want to say maybe 12, you know, so there's quite a few. And one of the chefs actually got up, and he was making ramen. So you know what ramen is, right? This Korean, and I said, we're going to have ramen after, you know, all this consumption of food and wine? He goes, yes, because this is what we do to fight hangovers. We all end with ramen. And I didn't know that.
Let's get it going over here.
And I thought that was so much fun. And so we all had ramen at the end. So that was my first tasting. The second tasting was done with slightly different people. So these were the CEOs and presidents of these big companies in Seoul that sort of run, you know, these big conglomerates. And that was actually a very fun group too, because they all love wine as well. And so I met, you know, the former president of Shinsegae, which is the big department store there. And Shinsegae is actually a conglomerate. They buy and they run a lot of different kind of companies in Korea. And he had just retired, and he loves wine, so he was one of the people who was at the tasting. And then an offshoot of Shinsegae, I met the CEO who runs that, who does more like online and other offshoot of Shinsegae. And then, you know, there was a president of some a medical device company who was there, and then W-Set3, but he also has this very distinguished honor with a society where there's only like apparently 2 Koreans who have that distinction in Korea, and he was there, and so great, you know, different group of people who again really love, and they were all Cabernet Sauvignon lovers, because that was my rule. I said, if we're going to have people, you know, be part of the tasting, they all have to love Cabernet Sauvignon, because of course that's all I drink.
That got them into the room.
and so that was a fantastic group of people too, and they all so very knowledgeable about wine, and they loved our wine too. So it was a lot of fun.
Had any of them literally come over here to where we are here in the Santa Cruz Mountains AVA or Napa or Sonoma, versus just drinking the imported
Yes,
wine?
So some of them have, and like they knew of the different AVAs. Like I know that they've posted about wines from Paso Robles and of course Napa, and the Santa Barbara region, but I think the Santa Cruz AV might have been an introduction.
Good
for them.
Well,
and
you represented it well, obviously.
Well, thank you. So I just had a great experience just being able to bring some of my wine that we produce in California and just, you know, letting Koreans taste it. That was my only agenda. It wasn't for anything else. It was just I wanted to take some wine and share it with some Koreans. And so I feel like I've accomplished that. And then at the same time, I got to sort of reconnect with the country that I was born in. Wow. And I actually met some cousins that I've never met before on my father's side. And it was wonderful to meet them. and I got to travel and tour all the just great places in Seoul, and I got to try out some other great restaurants. And so I was at another fantastic sort of modern French restaurant that is in Gangnam, which is, it's like the Beverly Hills of Seoul. And it was called On y va, and it's French for, I think, let's go. And he did a chef driven, 9-course
Wow.
meal, and he got a bottle of my wine, and fantastic chef, and they're so talented, and it was wonderful to sit with them and talk about food and wine.
I'm having a great conversation here with Julie, and when we come back after a break, we're going to follow up on her experiences in South Korea and also talk about maybe when that 2019 is going to be released and some previews. How did the harvest of 2022 go, and her experience in some local stuff here just recently with the Los Gatos Wine Walk. We'll be right back.
Thank you to the Los Gatos Community Foundation for their continued support of KCAT Public Media. Because of groups like the Los Gatos Community Foundation, KCAT has been able to inspire, educate, entertain, and inform our community through the magic of television and digital media for over 38 years. Thank you.
Okay, we're back, and Julie, I want to ask you, your fellow diners, including apparently, I believe one of them was, I'll call it a wine blogger, journalist, expert, combination thereof. What did they think of? Did they verbalize to you what they thought of the wines and anything? Was there a review that somebody did of?
So the wine expert actually has an Instagram post, and he actually did review the wine, and he talked about particularly the 16 and the 19, which is the one that's not even released. And he said that 2016, that wine was well balanced, rich and complex beauty with smooth tannins, and the flavors of blackberry, cherry, leather, vanilla, cumin, and spicy spices were impressive. And then he says about the 19, also, despite the 2019 being a young vintage, the body feel is superb. The intensity and balance of the fragrance was there, and the complex beauty of black and red fruit flavors were good. And the ripening potential was thought to be the best.
I concur. I think he nailed it. and haven't had the 19, but the 16 especially. And did they ask you, like, we'd like to have 20 cases of this? Do you say, well, we really don't have? Did they have that conversation with you?
So I've had a very short conversation with of the person who actually helped me coordinate some of the invitations, and he is a wine distributor in Korea. And we had a very short conversation. I'm not a big producer, right? We're a small batch winery, so we only make about 200 cases a year.
And for the record, you're in Los Gatos.
We're in Los Gatos Hills, yes.
And you're in the Santa Cruz Mountains AVA. And I think when you were last on the show with Albert, the bottom line was there really is no room for expansion of your vineyard.
Right.
That's located here.
Right. And that's not our purpose. We like the small estate vineyard. We like the size, because this is not our primary job, and we want to sort of keep it small and intimate. And so our goal is to really work with the local community. And so it's in, our local restaurants right now. And but because of this connection with Korea, I told the distributor that, I'm open to having some conversation about very limited releases there, if they're interested. But, either way, I'm fine. The main goal, like I said, was to just go take it to Korea and let them taste it and see what they thought.
It was mission accomplished from what it sounds like.
Yeah. So,
well, let's talk about your interaction with your fellow diners and the people that you met. Were everybody get along, or were there jokes or kidding each other, or was it very, very congenial?
So I have to say, of all the travel experiences that I had, that this was probably just one of the best experiences. And I went alone, right? Because I went alone. I was all about trying to connect with the country and meeting lots of people. And I have to say that the people that I met were the most kind and supportive and generous people that I've ever met. I mean, they just took care of me and chivalrous. Oh my gosh, they're so chivalrous there. It's like, even at the hotel, I stayed at, granted, I stayed at a nice hotel, but, I would walk out of the hotel and there'll be three men who said, how can I help you? And what can I do for you? And they would, call a taxi for me, because that's primarily how I got around. And the conversation that I've overheard, so I understand some Korean, but every time I got into a taxi cab, of course, they would already ask me, where are you going? The hotel employees. But the hotel employee would then tell the taxi driver, this is where she needs to go, and I'm entrusting you to take her there safely and make sure she's...
Very serious.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like, who says that? Nobody ever said. My husband doesn't even say that. And this is what they said. Every time they called a taxi for me, they, made sure that I got there safely and that they, knew where I was supposed to go. That was just one experience, but that was just kind of the vibe that I got, from everybody.
Very positive and a safe environment.
Totally safe. And the subways there were just immense and immaculate. Tons of people walk around. I went to all these Michelin star restaurants that were totally affordable, and these Michelin star restaurants only do four kinds of dumplings, right? Or the other Michelin star was crab. That's what they're known for. And so the dishes are limited, but they have this wonderful food, and it's totally affordable. These are amazing quality of food for me. I thought the price was just incredible.
The value
for what
and
you
the
get.
quality
The
were
value
awesome.
was just amazing. And so, everywhere I went and I ate well, and everything was just so delicious. Yeah.
Well, and they knew you were a doctor.
Yeah. So most of the people I did the wine tasting, they had they knew about my background, and they knew. But the cousins that I met, it looks like my family they're either all doctors or they're artists, 50-50. So really, I have a lot of doctorologists in Korea.
Well done. Well, good. Going there and coming back, have you said, I think I can use that dish that I had in Seoul, or maybe put a little riff on it, and I'm gonna try it with some of our wine?
So I have paired my wine with Korean food in the past.
Okay.
So, I try to do a lot of pairing when I invite people to our private wine tasting parties, and I have paired the famous Korean rib, galbi, and I've paired that with our wine, and it goes very well because it's red meat, it's rich, it's fatty, and that seems to go really well with our Cabernet Sauvignon. So, and other kinds of Korean dishes, like bulgogi, which is another kind of grilled meat. So I've done that in the past. So I know Korean food does pair well with our wine. And we just did the wine walk, Los Gatos wine walk last weekend. And we were paired with Coup de Thai, which is the Thai place. And so they actually carry our 2016 Cabernet, and they came up with some pairing dishes for
example,
for 2018. So chicken. So it goes well with chicken too. It was like a form of chicken satay that they did, and they did a pork dumpling that paired really well. And we had a lot of people that came to visit us during the wine walk, and people stayed for a long time, and they really enjoyed the wine and the food.
I think that my observations are Cabernet Sauvignon, I won't say gets a bad rap, but it gets pigeonholed into it only goes with X, Y, or Z. And from what you're saying, and your experience as well, it's got a much broader spectrum of food pairings and enjoyment, not just
absolutely.
ribeye steak and whatever. Yeah,
I mean, it's fantastic with ribeye steak.
Great pairing,
but,
classic.
I remember having a conversation with another chef in Los Gatos about our 2017. And our 2017 has sort of this long acid finish. And he said, wow, this will pair really well with, some of my fatty dishes like, duck. And he was going to pair it with duck, right? And then I've experimented with a lot of different kinds of dishes when I do our wine tasting. And I've made things like bean stew. I've had vegetarian dishes like tarts. And a lot of I think it pairs well with just simple like cheese, right? Cheese and bread, but dried fruit. I mean, I've done all sorts of pairing, and it all goes really well. And again, 2017 pairs super well with chocolate. Everybody loves that. So for some reason, that chocolate, that intensity of the dark chocolate and the 2017, they pair really well together. So I think it's sort of a mistake to sort of pigeonhole a certain kind of wine into, pairing it with only a certain kind of dishes, because I think you can honestly pair any kinds of food with, with Cabernet Sauvignon. Yeah.
Good. Well, let's switch focus a little bit and talk about the impending release and enjoyment of the 2019 Prolific Vines Vineyard Cabernet. So can you give us a little preview, whether it's from the barrels, bottle sampling, combination thereof, what to expect, what your thoughts are as far as what are the characteristics, the aging potential, etc.?
So we will probably release 2019 late 2024. So we just released the 18 not too long ago. And we like to give every year a release, just a little time to focus on that year. We don't like to release too many different years all at once. And we actually like to age our wine in the bottles for a while, minimum of 2 years. They're aged. We use a lot of French oak barrels when we produce our wine, and so we like to age them in barrels for at least 18 months to 2 years, and then another 2 years in the bottle before we
That's kind
release.
of the formula.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so 2019 will probably be released later 2024.
Can you tell us a little more specificity so I can put it in my Microsoft calendar in my phone?
Like what month?
Yeah. Just kidding.
Maybe summer of 2024.
Okay.
So maybe in about a year from now.
Okay.
So, the preview that we did with 2019 was that, our signature Cabernet Sauvignon seems to be that, we like to produce very smooth Cabernets. And that's because that's how I like my Cabernets. And so that's the kind of wine we want to produce. But the other commonality is we tend to be a little more fruitier. And so we're a little more fruit forward. We seem to have always this little presentation of plums and berries when you initially taste, and then it's followed by certain kinds of spices. So one year it was licorice. They talk about all the different cumin spices that come next, and then it kind of has that nice little acidy finish towards the end with very
no
smooth tannins.
sandpaper.
Yeah.
No gravel. It's got balance.
It's balanced, and that seems to be what a lot of the reviewers bring up, that all these complexities in our wine is very well balanced. So
it seems to be a mainstay from all the vintages in the finished product. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes. And every year, because you can't, we are dry farmers, so the weather, how much rain we get, all of those things affect our grapes. But so, of course, every year it's going to be a little different, because, we've had different kinds of weather in the last 5 years. Think about all the drought. And
you've gone from drought to allegedly the drought being over.
Right. And this year will be very interesting to see what happens with all this wine.
I was going to say, is there concern or worry about whatever of too much rain, or is it just that's Mother Nature's way, it'll all work out?
Well, so there's a way to tweak it. And so when we had all those years of drought, the sad thing is we didn't produce a lot of fruit. So the year for 2021 and 2022,
meaning the quantity of actual
we've only
berries,
produced 60% of the fruit, which means we're not going to produce the typical 200 cases. So those are going to be lean years. But the type of fruit that was produced is fantastic, right? Because it's really concentrated and the flavors are all just jam-packed into those grapes. So I have no doubt it's going to produce really good wine, but it's going to be in limited supply. So now we have the opposite this year, right? We've had so much rain. But luckily, our vineyard, we're sort of lucky because, as you've seen, we're sloped. We're at about 35 degrees. And so our drainage is fantastic. And we're up on the hill. So even though we had all this rain, it's got this potential to drain properly. And what they're going to do most likely is make sure the foliage is under control. So it may be that they have to reduce the foliage more often this year, because you don't want all that sugar from the sun, the sun produced, to go into foliage. You want it to really go into the fruit. And so the key is to limit the foliage. And so they're going to have to do a lot of trimming. Yeah. And I think that's going to work.
It sounds like you have a plan based upon what Mother Nature has given you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, going back a little bit in time, your most recent harvest, et cetera, was 2022. Mm-hmm. How did it go? Was it a clean vintage? Was it a good no fire? I don't think.
No, and we've actually, our grapes never got tainted by all the fires. We were really lucky that there were either on the other side of the mountain, of the Santa Cruz Mountains, or they were far enough that our grapes didn't get affected. So we did fine with all the fires, and we've had quite a few years of those things. 2022, although, was the sort of the last year of the drought, and that was after having many years of drought. And because we don't really water, 2022 was the year that we again only produced about 60% of our fruit.
So once again, the volume was down, but maybe the quality will be
be fantastic. Yeah.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, before we close off here, let's remind our viewers and listeners what are the best ways, platforms to get your wonderful wine and enjoy it. So
probably the easiest way to get some of our wine is just through our website, www.prolificvines.com, and be a wine club member. And if you join the wine club, then you could order, and we're, for locals, we are right here. So I'm going to say that most of our wine club members just come and just pick up whenever they need wine. They just message us and they'll come and get them. We also do private tasting parties by invitation only, and most people will follow us on Instagram at Prolific Vines, and they'll message me and say they're interested in being invited to one of our private tasting parties, and we have a waiting list going, and we'll invite them, and then you can come and sample some of our wine, and then they pick up wine at that point. A couple of times a year we also do these big pickup parties where we invite all of our wine club members to come and pick up their bottles for the year, and we've done that too. You can also if you want to just purchase a bottle really quickly, Terry Hope, who runs the
downtown
Los Gatos Coffee Roasting Company, actually sells our wine. And recently, the Tasting House has actually taken some of our 2018, and they will be selling some of our wine there, in addition to having you're able to taste them there as well. So Coup de Thai has our 2016, and most likely we'll also have our 2018. ASA's has our 2017, and 11 College Avenue has our 2017. And Coup de Thai, actually, they own two other restaurants. I think it's Pineapple Thai and maybe All About Thai, and they also have our 2016.
Okay.
So
there's a lot of options.
There's a lot of options, but I think that's going to be it. I think we're not going to, because we're such small batch producers, we actually want to really provide it for our wine club members and sort of limit our restaurant representation. But we still like this collaboration so people can drink it, when they're having these great meals at these great restaurants, and be able to pair it with our wine.
Well, it sounds like your trip to Korea reinforced what your everyday living does and experiences. Wine brings people together, and
totally.
And food aside and whatever, but you learn so much about yourself and the other person or people when wine is in the place, and whatever the magic is, it does occur.
Absolutely. And so when we have, and we try to have very small, intimate tasting parties too. I mean, you sit with, maybe just 18 other people in a long table, and everybody has this common interest, and that's, to be able to taste good wine and have some good food, and then you have this conversation flowing, and you learn so much about, what they do, they talk about their families, their children, their jobs, their interests. And I feel like every time we have these tasting parties, they leave as one of your friends.
Or
and
family, almost.
Yeah, and so you form this bond, which is like really great, because then, I really know my neighbors, and I just know a lot of people in Los Gatos and San Jose, and up to Mountain View, and some San Francisco people come down, and so I feel like you make a connection with people, and it's a good thing. That's what we need to do, is connect more with people, and they just
total
become like friends.
Listen, all this talk about wine, we should enjoy some. Cheers.
Okay, cheers. Thanks, Bill.